Joseph King, the Landscape King podcast. Here we go again. Today we have a special guest, Nikki Krieg. Nikki, tell us who you are. Kind of introduce yourself and tell us how you got into landscaping.
I am Nikki Krieg. I am a horticulturist and the foreman of Sweet Friend Landscapes based out of Baton Rouge. But first and foremost, I am a naturalist. Just always been interested in native things and the ecosystem. Love going outside and hanging out in the woods. So that's me.
Like even as a kid, you were always like little 6-year-old Nikki was out running in the woods, playing outside.
Are y'all familiar with Tunica Hills?
Yeah.
Clark Creek is what it's called now. I forced my mom to bring me and my friends there for my 6th birthday party.
Wow.
So she was running around with a bunch of 6-year-olds.
Trying to chase. It's for people that don't know.
It's kind of dangerous.
Well, it's the only place in Louisiana that has waterfalls.
Well, it's technically Mississippi.
Well, true. That's right.
Yes, it's the closest place with like legit waterfalls.
Like legit elevation changes.
Yeah.
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 So, Landscape King podcast, special guest. Of course, this podcast, if you don't know, we're a landscape company. We started in 2017, and we talk about plants. And that's why we have Nikki on today. And so when did you get into landscaping? What was your first exposure to, like, I guess you're running through the woods, going to Tunica and Clark Creek. And then from there, how did you have an, because you went to California too and worked and did some landscape stuff there as well, right?
Well, actually, wow, there's a lot to pack.
There's a lot to unpack, right?
I guess we'll go back to the first part of your question. And my dad always had a vegetable garden too, and he always, worked in the yard. So I always would watch him and help him in the garden, and so that's a big part of where my landscape interests came in. And then I started working at Clegg's when I was in high school. It was my first job, and I had that job for not straight 14 years, but I worked at Clegg's for 14 years, which is a really long time.
It is.
So I learned a lot there. And then, yes, I worked in Wyoming for a while with the Forest Service. My background in school, which I went to LSU, go Tigers.
That's right.
I was a renewable natural resources student. So I have my bachelor's in wildlife ecology management and also in horticulture. So I kind of fell in love with both things. I mean, it all is plants, right?
You're right.
It all has to do with plants. So that's really my passion.
You think Clegg's kind of led into that as well, just working there?
A little bit, yeah, because, I mean, there is so much nature just with plants. Right. And, the Clegg's that I worked at, which is different from the one you worked at, was on Segan, and there's a ditch running along the property, and there was always so much wildlife in that ditch, and I would just have so much fun.
So, you run away for the customers and, just go back?
No, when I was working there,
right.
I would, peer down or at lunch,
and see what was going on.
There's always fish and birds and turtles, and
there's
just always been fascinated by nature.
Yeah. And so what did you do in Wyoming?
I worked for the Forest Service, and I was doing plant surveys and animal surveys. And then towards the end of my time there, we finished all of our stuff. So I started working with the rangeland crew, and so we would ride out on horses and see if the cattle that were grazing on forest land was having too much of an effect. Like if there was still enough food for
that it would be able to sustain
the antelope, and the elk and mule deer and whatever else. So
was it hard to leave there and come back to Baton Rouge?
It was, but also I didn't want to be there for winter. So and I had to finish school. I still had one more semester of school, so
you finished with the bachelor's. And then did you say you did get a degree after that as well?
Well, that was my degree, the bachelor's degree.
Gotcha. Mm-hmm. Nice. I think the first time I met you, we were at the Denham location, and you might have been in the back of a Florida 18-wheeler, like one of those days where we're all grinding, unloading plants, everybody's sweating.
Yeah.
That was the first time I think. Do you remember that? Or
I definitely don't remember the first time, but it has to be in a Florida truck.
Yeah. So, during springtime, so the nursery she's talking about, Clegg's, I worked at the Denham location. She worked at the Segan location. but they would combine the workforce sometimes to be able to unload these trucks because during the spring they'd get like tons of plants from Florida.
Thousands.
Yeah. And so everybody, and sometimes they just buy us pizza and we'd just work all day unloading plants. It was a lot of fun. Yeah. So then 14 years at Clegg's. From there, at some point, you got into management there too, right? You were kind of supervisor.
Yeah. Eventually, some of the managers retired and left. So, people were bumped up the ladder. I became a supervisor for a couple years, and then eventually a manager for a couple years.
And so now, where are you at?
Now I'm at Sweet Fern Landscapes.
Okay. Hence the shirt. Yeah. Sweet Fern.
Yep.
Hashtag.
We are a small landscape company in Baton Rouge, and we try to focus on doing native landscapes for people. We are not native purists by any means. We use a lot of non-native plants still, but we try to incorporate at least some native plants in all of our designs. And sometimes it's all native. It just depends on the client.
Yeah, it depends on what they're looking for. So why do you think that's important?
There's so many reasons why that's important. Number one, just trying to help support our ecosystem that we have here and that we've been slowly destroying for centuries as humans have been expanding and just concreting over everything.
Right.
Changing native areas to agricultural fields, which, I like to eat too. So,
so
I'm not against agriculture, but there's a better way to do it, in my opinion. And I think the most basic step you can take to improve, what we've done and try to reverse the detrimental things that we've done is to nurture a small ecosystem in your own space.
Right. And so what kind of things are we trying to attract with that ecosystem? Like just
whatever you can.
Right. But like, so kind of creating like, obviously like butterflies and stuff, but like what lives in the ecosystem in somebody's yard? Like what are the beneficial things to try to, you see what I'm saying?
So, that ranges greatly based on your space and what each individual is willing to put into their land and their property. I would say that the most important thing for the ecosystem as a whole are insects.
Gotcha.
They're the basis of all life of the food chain. Every bigger animal, it comes down to something eating an insect.
Right.
And we're just constantly killing every insect we see. People put a lot of emphasis on bees and butterflies because they're pretty. And, we know that we need bees to pollinate our food, but there's so much more that's really necessary for the food chain to work.
And so how have y'all balanced that with kind of the desire of people wanting a landscape that's kind of like everybody else's?
Well, we don't typically attract the client
those kind of customers
that wants like the clean cut row of boxwoods and then like a holly tree.
Yeah. I know.
But we need both. There's both. There's a market for both for sure. And I definitely see a large growth in the amount of people that want the more naturalistic and want to support the ecosystem and the pollinators and the wildlife.
There's a lot of cool plants you can plant that
There's
are
so
native.
many. There's so many I had no idea about the 14 years I worked at Clegg's. I've learned so much in the past 3 years I've been at Sweet Fern. It's insane.
Because Clegg's is selling what sells a lot of times. And
well, it's selling what's being grown.
That's what it is. And so like what's being grown in Forest Hill or in Florida, and there's kind of already because y'all have a nursery as well.
We do.
Yeah, so tell us about that.
Yeah, so we do have a native nursery, Meadow Creek Nursery. We're based out of St. Francisville right now, but we're getting ready to open a Baton Rouge location.
Nice.
On Eddie Robinson Street down near Government.
Okay.
So it's going to be centrally located. But yeah, we grow native plants, never use any chemicals on them. We produce our own fertilizer, biochar.
Nice.
And yeah, it's going really well. We need more pots. We got some pots from Joseph this morning. So
So biochar, I kind of went on a tangent of studying about that one time, and I was like, I was gonna make my own biochar, and just like it's just kind of like burning organic material at a slow burn. Like, explain what that is.
Yeah, so you basically just burn like small sticks and logs and twigs and stuff, and you make charcoal.
Right.
And then you soak that charcoal in a natural fertilizer base. So I don't make the biochar, so I might not be 100% correct on this method, but I think we use like Sea Shield, which is an organic liquid fertilizer, kelp meal, different things like that. And you inoculate the biochar, and then you lay it out to dry. And then those nutrients bind to the charcoal, and then it's like slowly released over time. And it just helps
create like a controlled release fertilizer that's natural.
And not only that, it has microbes in it that help with the soil health. You know, so soil is everything, and you want your soil to be healthy and alive.
Right. And so then you're going to get like earthworms and other
the worms will come, but
good bacteria and
the bacteria and the fungi is going to be the basis of that healthy soil.
The beneficial stuff. Mm-hmm. Nice. And so y'all use that for the plants you grow. Do you use that for clients as well? Like when y'all do an installation?
Yep.
What is y'all's, so we kind of have our own process, but what is your process whenever you do an installation?
I mean, of course it varies place to place, but typically if we're installing a new bed, just where like grass was or turf, we will weed eat it down to the root. Nice. Or just like mow it really low. And then we put down cardboard.
Really?
And then we put soil right on top.
And
then we just plant there.
Breaks down?
The cardboard, yeah, we remove all the tape and anything else, and we try to get cardboard, you know, without any like printed color, you know, just like plain basic cardboard. And then it just smothers out the grass. So the grass dies. You don't have to do any tilling or anything like that. And then the cardboard just deteriorates over about a year.
And then you plant into and then y'all make your own soil as well?
No, we typically get soil.
Just like the same stuff that Clegg sells?
Yeah, Clegg's or Plant Tech or whoever is willing to deliver that day.
Same. And I had a few questions I wanted to ask you, but so obviously we already know, but what is your favorite style of landscaping if you had to define a style?
I would say like a cottage garden.
Yeah?
Yeah.
So explain cottage garden.
Just like lots of flowers, you know, some order, but not too much order. I like everything
like a little symmetry, but
growing together a little bit. So you get, you know, a lot of different textures and heights and just a good place for critters to hide.
Yeah. A fun place. But a lot of color, too.
Lots of color, flowers.
And so can you have that cottage garden style with, like, all natives?
Absolutely.
Yeah?
Oh, yeah.
So what do you use to give you, like, if you wanted a hedge or some sort of, like, symmetrical accent plant, what would you use? Like, instead of boxwood or instead of, like, a holly, to give you that accent plant.
Well, I mean, I guess you could use a Yaupon holly.
Yeah, you could. Yeah.
So we use Yaupons a lot. Yeah, as far as like a shrub goes, I'm trying to think. Fetterbush. We use fetterbush quite a bit.
Fetterbush. What is that?
It's a native shrub.
And then, does it flower?
Mm-hmm.
Nice. So what is your... Going back to that, I think my favorite native is probably the American beautyberry, which you would still classify as native, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, it grows in the woods all over the place.
Yeah, I mean, it's the coolest plant. It's got the little purple berries on it.
So pretty.
So what's some of your favorite plants?
It's hard to pick a favorite.
Yeah.
I would have to say I'm a tree person. So I love cypress trees, of course. White oaks are some of my favorite. American beech.
Yeah.
Those are some of my favorite trees. But as far as smaller plants go, Yeah, it's really hard to pick, and it changes season to season, you know?
Whatever's blooming at that time.
Yeah, whatever's blooming. So,
or
like,
whatever you see more often.
Yeah.
I feel the same thing.
I think one of my favorite, like, smaller flowering perennials right now is Spigelia, or Indian pink.
Okay.
It's just profusely blooming, small, easy to manage little flower, and it's red. It's like a star, and it's red with a yellow center, and they bloom in these little clusters that kind of unfurl like a fern frond almost. And then they do well in shade, which, you know, it's kind of hard to get heavily blooming things in shade sometimes. I just love them.
What's it called? Spigelia?
Spigelia.
Okay.
Or Indian pink is the common name.
I looked at y'all's website, and one of the things I noticed, like you said, y'all do use a lot of natives, but you had a bunch of Ligularia.
Oh, yeah.
Which is the coolest plant in the shade.
We're not native purists because, you know, there's a place for everything. We don't plant anything that's highly invasive. Like
Asian jasmine.
Oh, my gosh, jinx. Or Ardesia. We hate Ardesia with a passion.
So if you're trying to plant a ground cover, what would you plant that would be native or not super invasive? Or would you never?
Sun, or in sun, frog fruit is a really good native ground cover. It is very aggressive, but you could plant it instead of a lawn. It makes a dense ground cover, and it has these really cute little purple and white flowers.
Wow.
Pollinators love them. It's very hardy.
So you could take your grass out completely and just have that.
You could.
And you never have to mow. You just keep it kind of weeded.
Yeah, I mean, you could mow if you wanted to every once in a while, but you wouldn't have to. No, it would stay pretty short.
And so what do y'all use to keep weeds from coming like through a space? And I know that kind of weeds, you kind of want weeds, I guess.
Well, some.
Yeah.
You know. Oh, technically a weed is just a plant that you don't want,
undesirable
right?
plant, right?
We use our hands a lot.
Yeah.
To pull weeds. We pull most weeds.
So y'all do
in the garden.
Y'all offer maintenance as well.
We do, yeah.
Of just coming out there, keeping the weeds out, and just keeping it looking good.
Yeah, I mean, in the flower beds or in a garden bed, the best way to get rid of a weed for good is to pull it by the root
and get it completely out.
Now, in walkways or things like that, we'll use a high strength vinegar.
Yeah.
Or fire.
Yeah. Tell us about that. Don't y'all do controlled burns as
well? We do, yeah.
What?
So, yeah.
Just burn the whole place down and start over?
No, not the whole place.
Yeah.
But yeah, so going back to my background in wildlife ecology, I was trained in doing prescribed burns in school.
Wow.
So we kind of made that a little side shoot of our company, and we do some land management for people that need to clear out their woods or, there's a lot of reasons to do prescribed burning. For wildlife benefits, a lot of people do it on their hunting property. If you leave a plot of land, especially pine, without a burn for like 5-6 years, you're going to just have so much growth coming up in like sweet gums, privet, yaupons, that it just gets so thick nothing can even go through there. So you have to burn it. I mean, fire is a natural part of our landscape here that we've suppressed for so long that it really, it can make a whole plot of land like undesirable for deer specifically, but also like turkeys, really anything. So
having the fire makes it usable again.
Exactly.
Yeah. And so after the prescribed burn, what kind of protocol, what do you do to kind of kickstart the land again?
That's it.
It depends on, I guess it depends on what they're going to use it for.
Yeah. So most people just want, for example, our most recent burn that we did this past spring, they wanted to use it for hunting property.
Right.
And it was so thick. You couldn't walk through it. And literally that evening, the landowner sent us a photo of 2 deer in the woods.
Wow.
Like, still there are logs burning. And
so it helped them out?
And the deer were already back in there.
That's incredible.
I know. So just for wildlife mostly, but also for aesthetics. And we had another client earlier this year who just wanted to be able to see through the woods.
And that was it.
And that was it.
And so how do you keep it from spreading? Like what kind of
The fire?
Yeah.
Well, you have to have established fire lines. I mean, there's a lot of work that you do before the fire to make sure that it's safe and that it won't get out of control, that it's going to be contained in the borders that you desire it to be. Of course, you take a lot of precautions. You notify fire department, you notify, a lot of different people are involved just in case something does happen. And the weather conditions are really important. So, you can plan to do it on a certain day, but if the weather conditions don't line up, then
it's not going to happen.
Yeah.
But that's why they call you instead of just going out there with a bunch of diesel and making a mess. Yeah, exactly. So we talked about your favorite plants. What else do you think as an industry that we could do better? Maybe plant more natives? Or what?
I think that would be a good start. Yeah, that would be a good start. With the industry as a whole, I think there's a lot of problems. Where to begin? I think our overuse of chemicals is a huge problem. I mean, just in runoff alone is a huge detriment to all amphibians. I mean, think about you're spraying like atrazine, for instance, which is a really effective broadleaf weed killer. You spray atrazine all on your lawn to kill your weeds, and then it rains, and that washes off into the ditch, and that can kill like every amphibian in the ditch. I mean, atrazine is really bad for amphibians, just saying, but that's just one example. I mean, the use of Roundup, glyphosate, going back to the soil health, that is just like a broad spectrum antibiotic. So that's detrimental to your soil health and the microbiome of the soil every time you spray Roundup. So there's just a lot of things that I think could be done better in the landscape industry, that it's going to take just like one person at a time changing their management practices.
And kind of like what you're starting to see is the niche of people wanting a different style and different look. And the more that grows too, I mean, we use it and we use pre-emergence and like, because kind of the demand for us has been that people want that boxwood look. Yeah. And that's kind of been what we do. And we've slowly, trying to introduce different plants as well. And I think there's a balance between like what the demand is and what's best.
Yeah, 100%.
As well.
And that's why we're not native purists too.
Right.
We use a lot of Distilleum.
Oh, but I love Distilleum.
We use a lot of Ligularia.
Yeah.
Those are good standbys, and they're not doing any harm.
Right.
So I think a mix is a really good way to get people kind of more comfortable with
the look.
Yeah, and a little bit more ecologically friendly maintenance practices.
And not using as much herbicide and
yeah, I mean we don't use any herbicides at all,
or fungicides or insecticides.
No chemical fertilizers at all.
Wow. So. And then, I mean, it's just being aware.
Mm-hmm. That's huge.
Yeah, and I used to think that planting all natives was going to mean that you're just going to have a mess, like that it's just going to all be overgrown and wild and crazy.
It doesn't have to be.
It doesn't have to be.
No.
Right. And it could still, like you said, you still could use some of the staples and still have some symmetry and still have a really nice look. Yeah, so what other trends are you starting to see with things happening? I guess that's kind of a trend in itself, that people are starting to be more open to that and be more okay with that kind of natural look. Because I get some people telling us, like, I don't want boxwoods. I don't want the hedged, very manicured. I want more of the natural look. Are you starting to see that?
Well, definitely for us, because that's what people search us out for. But just in general, I think more people are learning about ways that they can help, just us as a species and the rest of, the environment that we live in. And I think people just want to help, Yeah. So people are definitely into pollinator gardens. People are really into, just trying to get some butterflies in their garden. So, we plant a lot of butterfly host plants. Just the other day, we found some queen butterflies. Do you know what those are?
No.
They're related to monarchs.
Okay.
not many people know what they are because they're kind of rare here. I don't think I've ever seen a butterfly, but somehow I knew what the caterpillar was when I saw it. But they also feed on milkweed.
But there is a native milkweed as well, right?
There's many native milkweeds.
Because there's a tropical one, too, that, like, a lot of times you see at the nurseries. But there is a native milkweed, right?
Yeah, there's a lot of them, actually.
And so what other native plants could you plant to attract, like, these queen butterflies, for example?
Well, the queens feed on milkweed, too, because they're related. They're in the same genus as monarchs, so they're very similar. Let's see. There's a lot of different things you can plant. So there's a pipevine swallowtail. You can plant the native pipevine for that. The zebra swallowtail feeds on pawpaw trees.
Oh, yeah? I've seen those before.
They're so cool. Of course, Gulf fritillaries feed on passion vine. That's a native.
There is a native passion vine?
There's a couple.
Okay.
There's 2 that I know of that are native.
And it looks just like the tropical one that you see, or similar?
Similar. They're similar. And then there's another one that is a really small passion flower. It's really cute. The flower is like the size of your thumbnail. It's adorable. And it's a really small vine.
I don't know. For me, like, I really got into plants working at Clegg's. And, like, for so long, I didn't realize that there were so many more plants that were out there and available and that could do well, because all I was exposed to was what was at Clegg's.
Right.
And I just learned, So I just learned what was there, and I just started using that. And, like, the more I've been in the industry, the more I see other options. And it's fun to learn about, and it's fun to try to incorporate new things. And especially what everybody always says they want is they want something that looks beautiful, but they want it to be low maintenance.
Yeah.
And so is that more achievable when you use native plants?
In some ways, yes, I think so.
Like, it's easier to grow things that are already been growing here for forever?
For the most part, I'd say that's true. There are some native plants that are very particular in the niche that they occur in. So, if you're trying to take a wetland plant and you're putting it in a garden that's doesn't have an irrigation system and is never going to get watered, that's not a good fit. But there's always, the right plant for the right spot. You you use that all the time, I'm sure.
Yeah.
I mean, every landscaper does. So you just have to pick the proper plant for the proper spot. And then it can make your life very easy. A lot of our gardens are heavily flowering native perennials, and they really don't need that much maintenance. We go in and we weed a little bit here and there, but as long as you have a good mulch layer down, there shouldn't be many weeds.
Right.
And then, we'll prune them back depending on the plant, once in the summer to get some new growth and new flowers coming out. Otherwise, we just prune out some dead material in the spring whenever new life is starting to grow out. I think that's pretty simple.
Yeah, it is. And just keeping the weeds out. And then how often do you have to apply the biochar fertilizer?
We usually just do that once.
Just once in the early spring?
Yeah, I mean, if you can maintain your healthy soil, it does its own thing. It doesn't need any more input. We put mulch down, and that's the most, nutrient input that bed is going to get, is just decomposing organic material.
And what kind of mulch do y'all recommend, and what do y'all use?
Our favorites are hardwood mulch and pine straw.
Okay, and
that's
without any kind of dyes?
Yeah, no dye.
Yeah,
definitely not red.
Definitely not. No matter what. Yeah. And some people like the red. I mean, we mostly just use we'll use a dyed black or a dyed brown, like the Bark Bright.
Yeah, I mean that's fine.
Straw.
We don't use that, but that that doesn't
just don't use the red.
That doesn't anger me.
I know. And as a kid, my parents always used the red, and then I called them out on it when I was because I worked at Clegg's as a teenager too, and I was like, "Why are y'all using this? This is awful." I also noticed that they always would cut their crepe myrtles back and do the crepe myrtle. Yeah, no. I was in a house of murderers.
Oh, well, they know better now.
Yeah, they do.
It's a learning process.
For everybody.
That's one of my favorite things about this industry is there's always so much to learn.
And I also like that it doesn't ever have to be perfect. Like when you're building a house, everything has to be perfect. Or it should be. But when you're building a landscape, like you can, like for me, like I'm able to just kind of wing it sometimes. And like that's kind of been something I've loved about landscaping too, that you can kind of just, you know what I mean? Like you can kind of make adjustments on in the field, and
it's fluid. It's growing. It's changing. It's never going to be one, set way.
No, it's not. And that's what makes it challenging too.
Yeah.
Especially when thinking about design. And so do y'all draw things out for clients as well and show them? So what does that process look like?
I don't do that. I just implement the designs, but the owner, Jess Cole, and another person who we just got on our team, Nuet Nguyen, they are our designers. So Jess typically and has classically done just these gorgeous hand-drawn designs. She's an artist and a potter. What do they say? People that make clay things. Is that what they call those people? Ceramic artist.
Nice.
That's what it is.
That sounds better.
By training, and so she is very attuned to the subtle curves and like the shaping of things and how things fit together. So she's really good.
And
at
people eat
designs.
it up.
Yeah, they eat it up. But I mean, it's mind blowing how she places things so perfectly, and she can envision how they're going to grow in together, and it's like a beautiful painting when it's done,
And so she has a background in plants as well.
She's, I don't know how many years she's been doing this, but well over a decade.
Okay.
She's had her own company and she's been doing her own thing.
And how long have you been at Sweet Fern now?
I want to say 3 years.
So since
time has flown by.
Yeah, it has.
Yeah.
Yeah, that feels like yesterday. I
know.
remember talking to you about it there. And
I know.
It's just nuts. Yeah, so that process, so a lot of people are finding you. And then there's another company that we've done some stuff with them as well, Swampfly. Do you know the Swampfly girls as well?
Yeah, I know the Swampfly girls.
Yeah, so they do kind of the same or similar kind of stuff as
We're very similar. Yeah, I think we have the same end goal.
So are you starting to see other companies like that come out of?
There's some in New Orleans, for sure, that I don't know their names, unfortunately, so I can't plug them, but I've seen some in New Orleans, some in Lafayette. They're definitely out there.
It's probably going to expand as that.
I think so.
As that need and niche kind of grows. And because it's a niche, you probably can have premium prices too, and because there's not many people doing it, and there's probably a lot of money to be made in that niche. It's really smart for ecology, the environment, and to just have a good business.
Yeah, I mean, really, it's just what we believe in,
That too. Yeah.
Bettering the environment and the community.
Right. And so talking about that, you have some events coming up. Tell us about it.
So on May 25th, we're having a milkweed giveaway and just a fun event. It's going to be from 9 a.m. to 1 p.m. At 128 Eddie Robinson Drive. And we're going to be giving away milkweed. We're going to have, I think, some other plants for sale. And we're going to have kids events. There's going to be face painting. I think we're going to have a gelato by City Gelato. We're going to have a little band. It's going to be just a fun event.
It's kind of the kickstart of the nursery, huh?
Yeah, kind of the kickstart of our new space. And it's put on by our associated nonprofit, Louisiana Wild Society.
Okay.
But yeah, it's going to be the grand opening of our new Baton Rouge Meadow Creek nursery location.
Very nice. So what's the date on that again?
May 25th. It's a Saturday.
Coming
9 a.m. to 1 p.m.
Face painting.
Yeah.
Plants, so you can attract some queen butterflies.
Yep.
That's right. And then what's this association? So what do y'all do with that?
The Louisiana Wild Society.
Yeah.
So it's pretty new. So far, we are just kind of getting the ball rolling. We're doing some volunteering, so they're kind of helping us fund volunteer opportunities.
Okay.
So helping Baton Roots with some different things, and also Baton Rouge Green do some different things. So, and then just kind of getting the word out to the public, and with just public interaction on ecological benefits of native landscaping.
Yeah.
Or just native plants in general.
Just kind of growing that and yeah, exactly. Cool. All right. So, thank you for being on, Nikki. I am definitely going to try to incorporate some more native plants. I want to start seeing some things that we could plant as well. So definitely this fetter bush is interesting. I find too, like especially with boxwoods, I guess maybe it's because there's an overplanting of boxwoods, but just like everybody's having issues with those. Like an alternative for that, I guess, is dwarf Yaupon holly, which is kind of a native plant.
Yeah.
We've kind of used soft touch. I mean, what else could we do if we wanted that real formal, clean look? What do we do?
Yeah. I don't have a good answer for you on that one.
Plant something else.
Yeah, plant something else. We've done dwarf Yaupons too.
Yeah.
And then, some of the Distilium will give you kind of a similar look, but they do like sprawl out a little bit more.
I love the way they do. They kind of have a almost whimsical or like real loose feel to them. All right. Well, Nikki, thank you for being on the podcast. It was really fun. There's always something to learn in this industry, like you said.
Absolutely.
Join us next time. So next week, or when this comes out, our plan of the week, we've kind of been doing a plan of the week each week. This past week has been hydrangea, and there is like the oak leaf hydrangea is a native.
That was one of my favorite plants that I
you
forgot
didn't even
to mention.
I love it too. And so we'll post on like Instagram and Facebook our plan of the week. This coming up, I'm gonna go ahead and do our plan of the week as being the Calocarpa americana, American Beauty Berry. And there are some other varieties that might not be native, but there's some that have like a pink berry. And is there one that's white, or is it just
There is a white.
Nice. And so join us next time, Landscape King Podcast. Remember, let's plant some plants.